This podcast is based around the history and experiences of the infamous Shane Bugbee, recollected and retold by Shane Bugbee himself. Who is Shane? Well, you're about to find out. I'm your host, Nannerl, and this is Speak of the Devil.
So a big thing that I start seeing a lot of on Twitter is taking evidence from someone's past. Let's just talk about you, Shane. Recently, I saw that you're passed with the Might is Right podcast, interviewing white supremacists, and just generally different kinds of people has gotten you in trouble as of late as basically a sympathizer or someone who profits off of white supremacy. And I personally don't agree with it. And it seems like it's a very recent trend.
For myself, that is not recent, but in culture, in the society, it seems to be weird. Dredging up people's past, like I'm 50 years old and 25-year-olds using that against me is telling. I don't know. I wish people were smarter instead of just looking for. They're so rabid right now, politically rabid to attack someone, where it's like looking at it, you would think, okay, I'm going to look at this and then look at the entirety of someone's career before you attack them, because you might do yourself harm. These are all people looking to climb onto me, on top of me, or to use me as a stepping stone for their own career. And the people who are following these people are probably the same kind of beast. They're looking to climb something versus look at it's a fucking joke to call me a Nazi when you look at the entirety of my career, or to think of anything like that. Like I've said in our sampler podcast, the state's attorney of Illinois has called me a journalist, like what I do as a journalist, because I interview people and I ask them questions, and they can be of any ilk. Recently, right now, politics are so intense that it is of question when the New York Times gives fluff pieces to people who are alt-right or borderline racist. Like, some people are alt-right and some people are just racist. And when they give these fluff pieces to them, it is of question. But that's 25 years ago. That wasn't the case. For me, I'm an underground, like when you put it into context, like I'm an underground publisher, first of all. I'm a high school dropout, a junior high school dropout. So I'm not educated. I'm just going at this and expressing myself and asking questions. I have a pure inquisitive nature. So I'm not sure, I've told this story before, and I don't know if I've told it on our record, but when I first met LaVey, I brought Might is Right out there to visit him with. And he wrote the foreword. The afterword was written by an actual Nazi. My original version of Might is Right is red with Nazi fonts, a Nazi death head on it. So I'm selling it, I'm promoting it as a Bible I was told is the Satanic Bible and the Nazis' Bible. When I was given that book, I was given it, and it was like, this is the Satanic Bible, just rewritten. This is what LaVey stole the Satanic Bible from. I was also handed Might is Right from a Nazi, saying, this is our Bible. So I was like, wow, this Church of Satan uses the same Bible as the Nazis. So for me, it was a pure artistic exploration. Now, when I brought it to LaVey, it was the day before the first anarchist book convention. When I went to that book convention, I was told the skinheads against racial prejudice sharps were coming to beat me up. They surrounded my table and looked at everything that was on my table. And Might is Right was there. And they looked at everything else, and the guy looks up and goes, you couldn't be a Nazi. Do you publish all this stuff? And I go, yeah, this is all my work. I do Michael Hunt Publishing. And he looks and he shows it to his the guy next to him, and they're looking at the stuff, and they're very thoughtful about kicking my ass, I guess. And I had tear gas containers in my jacket. I think I have told this story on record before here. But the point is, they looked at the context of everything I did and made a decision to walk away, because I was just a person who was maybe however you want to see me. But my politics weren't that of a right-leaning person. They were actually, the books I put out are the first books that are going to be burned when they burn books. When they take speech away, I'm the first guy they're going to attack. So I'm actually on the front lines opposed to those political ideals, and yet I would publish a Nazi. Call me crazy, call me ignorant, but don't call me a Nazi. Like, that's never been in my intention. I have been ignorant in my life, and I don't need to say, I don't like I have a problem saying I'm sorry about it, because someone said, well, you're sorry about some of your past. And I said, I don't know if I am. How can I be sorry for the person I was? That's just who I was. It's for interpretation. And when I interpret as a critic looking back at myself as a third person, like, who is this Shane guy? I try to interpret it that way. And like I said on that last show, I look at it as, wow, this kid was an abused kid, a survivor of extreme physical, sexual, and mental abuse from his parents. And he came out of it, and he published angry, hate-filled books. Like, if anyone's like screaming for help for my people I relate to, which is abuse survivors, it's me. Why did I published the rape book from Jim Goad, an alt-right guy. Yeah, I come from the angry white male world. Like, that's right. That's exactly where I come from. But I come from it in such a pure way. I should be studied. I don't have a political theory. I was politically apolitical back then. I'm coming at it purely, and when I look back on it, I look at it as my father was the first person that lost the American dream. He was sold that if he worked 40 hours a week, he'd have the house, the car, the wife, the 2 kids. He did all of that, and they laid him off, and there was layoffs, and it was like corporations stopped. He wasn't going to get the gold watch. He thought, wow, I got this job with Honeywell. I'm going to work here till I'm dead, till I retire. That was the American dream, to work for a company till you retire. And he was the first wave of seeing that go. And when the unions were getting busted, he was telling me how he was putting his hate into me. Like, telling me how the rights are no longer on the side of the working man. Unions are destroyed. Robots are going to take your job, kid. You have no future. So he's putting all those fears and hate instead of hopes and dreams that he was given. He was putting fear and hate into my heart. And so you grow up and you watch that. This guy becomes a drunken alcoholic. He's got no, like, all this stuff manifests in my expression. I'm a pure, like, artist, and I hate to say that word as a title to be fitting in, because it's like a romantic thing. But I'm a person who really does express himself in a way that's dangerous for my survival, but great for people who are paying attention to it and want to analyze it because it's pure. So it's hard for me to be apologetic about the stuff that I had a part of because it's pure. I didn't join a group. I didn't join a Nazi party. I just let them have a forum and I made jokes about it. I didn't take it seriously. And those things are unfortunate when I look back and listen to them. But it's hard to say I'm sorry for something that I really was honest about. Like, I was an honest exploration. I didn't tell people to join anything. I didn't tell people to hate people. I said the N-word a couple times and laughed at awful jokes. Today, I wouldn't do the same thing. And if I hear that stuff come out of a young person, I feel like I know right away, man, you're hurting inside. You're hurting inside. That's why you're doing it. I hear Richard Spencer. I don't hear pain in him. And maybe he is. You know what? I have to take that back. Trump, I hear the abused child. his father picked on him. His father probably beat the shit out of him. Because I can hear it in his tone. I can relate to this. Like there's an Asperger's thing from him that comes out in some of the stuff he says that people make fun of, where I'm like, oh, he sounds Asperger's. And there's an abused child thing that comes out in him, where he gets very red-faced and very like bully. The bully that you see in him is probably the abused child fighting back or something like that. It's unfortunate he has such privilege and power and money, because that's a dangerous thing. It's the same like when they talk about Hitler. He was people analyze him years later and talk about him being a frustrated artist that was never accepted, never taken in, always on the outside, never getting love from women. You know, being that, what do you call it? Where the people
incel.
Incel. He was an incel, and so there's some really legitimate things to that, and it's looking like it's manifesting today, like incels. We have a word for it now. Well, that was Hitler. He was a frustrated artist, not listened to, not heard, not seen, and it's important to hear and see people. And it's important to look beyond the rash that we have on our arm and look for not just look at the symptoms of our problems and attack the symptoms constantly, because that's what we do in our culture. Like, we attack the symptoms, but we never look for a cure for the disease. Where does that come from? Where does this disease come from? I don't know. I'm a junior high dropout, but I don't hear Ivy League people having the answer either. I just, go ahead. I'm sorry if I'm rambling.
Oh, no, not at all.
We're upsetting subject.
We're going to come back to the incel thing later, but I want to come back to what you were initially talking about, having a pure perspective with these very controversial, dangerous ideas. 3 things come to mind for myself. One is saying the N-word in those situations is a little different than going to the south side of Chicago and saying the N-word. Unfortunately, it was sort of akin to locker room talk, the way you may have been using it with those people. Much like you might have in that age range, you may have talked about women in a way that you would never use with me, but perhaps with another man. It's all in good fun. It's an unfortunate and again, this is sort of a problematic thing, but 20 years ago, I could see how someone may have said something and didn't feel like they needed to assume responsibility for such a thing.
Yeah, and at that time when I was talking to Radio Free Satan, I had lived on the south side of Chicago, and I'd lived with a black family. You are correct. I would not say those things, but I would say exactly what I said with my friend Joey in the room, or whatever like that. We were able to talk about the differences in race and be very crude about it. He was very crude about white people, and I was very crude about his differences as well. But that was a free speech that existed in a bedroom or over a coffee table in a living room. It wasn't broadcast. And see, we were new to the like the internet's new. We're broadcasting. I'm not thinking 25 years later this is going to be actually circulated around the web to be ripped apart like that.
I think that also those discussions regarding race with friends is a very special form of intimacy. And any sets of friends, whether you lived together or not, or if you're in a relationship with someone and it is an interracial interracial relationship, whether friendships or otherwise, I think that it is a requirement. If you're not comfortable talking about race, whether you are the white person or the not white person or whatever you are, then you're going to have a problem in your friendship. Your friendship does not have enough trust in it if you can't talk about those topics, I think.
Right. Right.
Another thought I had within those 3 thoughts I was talking about is the next one that I think of is that you were merely a fly on the wall in a lot of those situations. When you are a journalist or a cameraman or a sound guy or anything like that, and you're in a room monitoring something or documenting something, you are the fly on the wall. Even if you are creating an agenda, even if you had a bias, you still are allowing those people to crucify themselves if they're going to do so.
Yes, I was definitely that. I was mimicking what I saw on TV, which being a journalist. If I ever said the N word, or I ever said anything that was shocking, it was on purpose. But my purpose was always to, always watching my parents watch TV. It was always, how can I get someone to stop watching TV and have a conversation? So it was always shock jock mentality. It was like, bam, slam my hand down with a word. You say these things and get people to go, wow, that's shocking, and go, yeah, let's talk. And I don't know where I'm going. I'm an ignorant person. I'm uneducated. But yeah, I want to talk about this shocking thing. Why is this shocking? Why is this? What is upsetting about this word? Why do we say it? I was there for an educational thing for myself and others. And yes, I was a lot of times mimicking, like when I did interviews, I was mimicking news people. But all of my interviews, all of them are how I got my education. It was my search, my road on the occult road. When I would look for secret information, when I was looking for occult information, it was done in all of my interviews, all of them. Like I noticed interviews I did, I think 10 or 15 years ago when I did this, the Year at the Wheel thing, this project where we went around the country and interviewed people. I asked everyone about their parents, especially if they were well-adjusted. If I met well-adjusted rich people, I was like, can you tell me about your parents? And they're like, well, what? I'm like, did they love you? Yes. And so my scientific thing is, after interviewing hundreds of people and asking them about their parents when they're well-adjusted or not, is a decent set of parents is really important in a successful human being's life. Most successful people, most of them, have had parents that love them, even if their parents weren't the best parents. My mom wasn't the best, but she loved me. I know she loved me. You hear that. That's like the unifying factor in what a successful person is. A lot of people pick yourself up by your bootstraps. It becomes hard when you come out of abuse. It becomes really hard. It becomes hard to trust people, and it becomes hard to communicate in a loving way. I'm just lucky. I think life is a lot of luck. I got lucky that a lot of the guides, a lot of people chose to help me out. I'm lucky I took that help, and I'm lucky the guides in my life that I chose versus the ones I could have chose, which I chose a very positive. If there's, I don't believe in free will so much. I think that's overrated. But the compulsion for me was always to go with the positive force, a heart, a librarian kind of person, like an intelligent person. And so I was lucky to have those kind of guides in my life. Or today, I'd be really a bad person. And I mean, wouldn't be able to feel love, wouldn't be able to look at a squirrel and go, wow, you're cute, look at you. I was talking to the squirrels the other day in the park, and I don't think I would have been able to do that 20 years ago.
I think that another aspect of being a fly on the wall is the fact that you are a white male and you were able to communicate in those circles. I'm pretty sure that the openness that a lot of these personalities have had with you in the past would not have given that same access and trust to, say, me, if interviewed. And I think that it's not a privilege, but it definitely was an opportunity that you were allowed to have to document as a journalist. And I think that recording these things is still very important because it is an existence you can't deny.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I was among white people, I would agree with that. Now, Heart Warrior Chosa, she told me my talent. Because she's like, why did I get to hang out with her? No one got to hang out with her. And why do people on the reservation openly welcome me? And people in Ely were did not believe me. when I was welcomed into some of these things. They're like, there's no way white people have never been welcomed over there. And I asked Heart Warrior about it, and she goes, well, that's true. I don't like white people. I hate them. But she goes, you have no pretense. You lack pretense. So you're able to walk into these places because you lack pretense. Maybe it's part of that Asperger's thing. Who knows? I don't know. I see things. But she also said that. That's why I was welcome into like reservations. And I've been welcome into black communities and other communities. And maybe that's it. I lack pretense too.
And perhaps those people thought so too.
Yeah, but amongst white people, you're right. They are way more revealing with me because they think like I'm one of them. And you're right about that. And a lot of times when I'm race traitor, Mr. Race Traitor to a lot of people. I get called that now. Especially when I was like, I love Bernie Sanders. I heard people like, how could you like Bernie Sanders? You sold me Might is Right. And I'm like, what does one have to do with the other? I mean, what the fuck are you even talking about, you stooge? Like this guy's right. Listen to what he's saying. Like, this guy's really smart. He's for a people. You're a people. You're a people, dude.
As a journalist, also, you shouldn't be in trouble for who you interview. You interviewed them for whatever purpose, but, okay. Ken Burns. Ken Burns is he's that guy, right? From, during the Vietnam War, he took a lot of photos of, like, there's the picture of the little girl that napalm melted off her clothing and she's crying. And other war photography. There's other journalists who did World War II. Other journalists who saw other atrocities around the world. Those people are not in favor of one side or another, and neither should you.
Well, I agree with that, but journalists are always the ones beaten up, thrown off a plane. They're always the ones under attack. Look at Trump. He is attacking journalism. So it is, but a journalist, by their nature, a lot of people have the misunderstanding that a journalist is not biased. And we are. The minute you pick your subject, you're biased. It's not that you're just trying to report things for how you see it. Yes. And when people take in the news, they're supposed to take it in from multiple journalists so they can get a balanced perspective themselves. Most people just take it in from Fox or CNN, and they're getting just a biased presentation. And that's always how journalism will be, is biased. You can't have an unbiased thing unless a computer is reporting just computer facts.
What I meant by that actually was like those war journalists were not called Nazis because they took pictures of Nazis. That's right. That's what I meant.
Right, but it's because that's why I get picked on and not journalists, is because I'm like a juggalo or a metalhead. I don't have the education, so I'm picked on constantly, and people have access to me. So it's just that crab pot mentality. It's like let's tear this guy apart because he's right next door to us. I haven't removed myself to the suburbs and have a fence around my home. And, I think there's a lot to do with that. It's the class of person I am, then why I don't get treated as a journalist. But when I talked to Edwin Kagan, lawyer for the American Atheists, he most certainly took me as a journalist and a filmmaker. And he said that. He goes, "You're a journalist." And I go, "Thank you for recognizing that." Or the state's attorney who put Gacy to death, he's right away said, "Well, you're a journalist." And, I always thankful when someone recognizes that, but those people are very educated people. They can see what I do, and what I do by the definition of what I do is journalism. A lot of times, or it's artwork, it's a mix of those two. Artwork can be considered journalism. You're documenting. Even a painting can be called a documentary, but I'm getting too deep here.
But even a lot of artists who are no longer living, who express their frustration over their circumstances, or even living artists, such as yourself. I think that you're absolutely right that journalism is an art. And 20 years ago, what you were saying, what you were interviewing, the things you said to express your anger, perhaps it's being viewed as a harsh lens because you're still living.
I wonder. I also, some of the stuff that I did is rooted in hate and anger, and like the stuff we did was a transgressive art movement. And I remember back then having a rebel flag with Charles Manson on it. And I thought that was the coolest thing. It was just like it would look cool. I liked the colors of the flag. I didn't take it as it's taken as I take it today. And I just didn't realize it hurt people's feelings the way it did. I just didn't realize that. So that's why I came to an awakening over debates online with that. But I remember having that hanging during the 24-hour radio show and someone writing or posting up that, he even has a rebel flag with Charles Manson on it. And I was like, so fucking what, dude? You're too sensitive. I saw it as that, I don't know. You can't expect everyone to have the same compassion that you do. And when you hold them in such a cruel way because they don't, did you ever have compassion in the first place? Or is it just your political motivations to move ahead? Because a lot of these attacks on me don't smack of having the compassion they're asking me to have. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, they're quite cruel, actually, half the time. Right. And it seems like they're just attacking you because it doesn't fit within their favor. Or it's someone who's genuinely angry with you or people like you or something like that. And so they're looking to punish all those people in that group. It feels noble to them because it feels conventionally something that others will oppose to.
Yeah, or it's like maybe it's a common thing with people. They just like to kick people when they're down because they're so down. Wow, I'm working at this shitty taco stand or this donut shack, and I'm so fucking pissed off about my life. I want to kick this motherfucker while they're down, or I see a weak spot. Look at that weak spot. It's so big I can't miss it. And I'm going to pound on this guy's weak spot until he's down. And it's like, I've had to rethink that stuff and go, well, I don't see my past as a weak spot. I just see it as my past. That's why it's hard for me to apologize for it. But when I look at my past, I don't have a whole career of racial stuff. I don't have a whole career of hating a certain group of people. My stuff is really easy to dissect when I look back on it. So fuck people that are going to pick one part of it out and try to use it against me. I'm proud of my past because I'm a survivor and I fought back in a creative way. I didn't go out and beat people up. I didn't go out and join a party like that. I've been an individual and made artwork and published books I thought were important. And, I'm not, the might is right stuff. It's hard for me to want to keep it in publication anymore based on the misinterpretations of it. But that seems to be unfortunate at the same time because it's just a fucking book.
And sometimes the same argument about the Bible can be said so too. Look at the misinterpretations of that.
Right. So it's just a fucking book. And we're supposed to take books as books, like turn the page, put it along, debate it, write your own book, use that as a stimulation to write your own book. But this is the world of knowledge you're given. You don't burn these books. You don't destroy books. That's how I was raised. I've always held education and knowledge sacred, even if it's knowledge I don't agree with or I'm opposed to it. And that's not to say that when I was younger back then, I wasn't a person who wanted to burn Bibles and did. I burned Bibles. I ripped them apart. I felt they were awful. But that was more of a cathartic thing to me.
It's also, you weren't going down the street and saying like, hey man, you come out and burn your Bible. It's time to burn your Bible. Everyone burn your Bible and make it disappear.
But if someone said that, I might have said, yeah, I agree with them. Everyone should burn their Bibles because I'm so opposed to the religion, the whole thing of it. But at some point, my politics would kick in and go, wow, that's a precedent-setting thing. If they burn one book, they burn others. So I have to give all books their freedom. Or mine's going to be caged at some point. Mine's going to be burned. So no books get burned. Or all books get burned. Because that's how it goes with that. So that's how it goes with speech as well. No speech gets stifled or all speech gets stifled. But it becomes very perplexing to go, how do you offer speech to someone who wants to take away speech? Well, the individual should have the right to talk about that. A group with a microphone, maybe not so much. Maybe YouTube should be pulling those videos down because they're giving they're almost legitimizing or weaponizing a silly opinion, of a one person. They weaponize it almost. So it's complex. But I don't know if speech should be given to people who are against free speech. That's an interesting concept that I mull over.
Right. What about the idea that free speech includes ideas that oppose, say, my ideas or your ideas, things like that? Are you okay with that?
Oh yeah, well that's free speech, of course. Mm-hmm. But I think we're getting into a nuanced society, a more nuanced belief or more nuanced conversations. So between me and you talking about anything is one thing. When we get on this mic, we sort of have a responsibility to, you're going to add trigger warnings to this.
Oh, yes.
That to me, warning labels, when I was for free speech, I was against warning labels. I thought they were just crude and disgusting and demeaning to people. Of course, an adult can pick up a book and see this is not for my children or this is for my children. But it's not for me to decide it's for my children or not. And like me as a publisher, it's not for me to put a sticker on going, this is adults only. That's up for someone else to decide, whoever picks it up. So trigger warnings like that, it's almost like demeaning to it's like, I'm intelligent, I can figure this out. But you're right about putting them on there. We're broadcasting to a large group of people. And so there should be warnings on there. It's different than me and you hanging out over coffee and talking about this stuff. We don't need to sit there and warn the table next to us. Hey, we might be getting crazy over here, being ourselves, talking about something radical.
Hey, man, I like to put blue cheese in my chocolate cake, and you might not like this at all, so maybe turn around. Look at your salad over there. Have a good time.
Listeners, she's not joking. She told me off the record she had blue cheese and cake, chocolate cake. Like, that's true.
It's an occult secret.
There, you got another one.
It helps block the retrograde.
Oh, my God, I need that. Now I want cake again. Son of a bitch, I'm trying to stay away from sugar.
We should deplatform the cake as well.
Right. But I do agree with speech on all forms, I think, though, but because of we're talking about free speech as defined by people who didn't have microphones and newspapers and stuff like that. At this point, everyone has a microphone. Everyone has power. The power is being dispersed. Everyone can get on YouTube and say these crazy ideas. So possibly free speech is an individual right, and it's not a political party's right or an advertiser's right or a publisher's right. When you decide to publish your theories on YouTube, maybe you don't have the same rights as you do in your living room.
The terms of service. It's sort of, when you post on YouTube, it is like living room versus YouTube's house, basically. Mm-hmm. You're going into YouTube's house, and you can't disrespect that house. Same with Twitter. Right.
And so I get that. That's a real important thing, I think, is to look at speech differently based on our society. And do I think personally that YouTube should give a forum for someone who wants YouTube to be burned to the ground? No, I'd probably not. It's probably not the smartest thing, but I'm not sure how to control that. And once you start controlling things, you become like these controlling assholes that want to control speech. So it's a really hard thing to figure out a theory that I can apply beyond saying we are reaching a nuanced state of existence that we've never been privileged to have. That means feel the pain of people in the Middle East, not only in Florida or across the country, but we're feeling the global pain because people are able to broadcast it. And it's a wonderful, enlightening moment. But and it's hard to legislate respect or intelligence. It's hard to legislate those things. But certainly it's odd to give speech to someone who does not like free speech. It is certainly you talk about a contrarian, we spoke about this off the microphone. it's certainly a contradiction, a mighty one.
Do you think a lot of people who hold very controversial or extreme forms of beliefs wish to have a conversation with someone who thinks the opposite?
I don't. I think they want to have a conversation with people who will follow them. They're easy to talk to. A conversation might break down your beliefs. I think a lot of those people that are controversial in their beliefs are solid. They're not philosophical. They become religiously minded, and they want to move forward, like march forward into, like, who can I convert? So they want to have a conversation with people like, well, tell me more about your belief system. Okay, and they'll talk to you. But when someone's opposed them, like, no, don't open your mouth anymore, buddy. I know where you're going with that. They're not looking to debate them and win a debate. Even if they say, let's debate, they're not. They're looking to convert. They're looking to get followers.
Does this include the right and the left? All sides are kind of like that.
I think it includes fanatics.
Okay.
So I'm on a hard left. And I appreciate antifa, but I also see the disservice they do to their own beliefs. Violence. When you become violent, you become what you're opposing. So I'm of a peaceful person. I want to put that out there. I'm a violent person by what I was taught as a child. But the character inside me yearns for peace. Like, I cry over violence, but I could be, if I'm triggered, I could be quite scary. And I might hurt someone. But man, that sucks. I would really like to be a peaceful, like the character inside me would like to never have that reaction. And I think when you have that reaction, it just becomes a tennis match. When you become violent, no matter if you feel justified, it creates violence. How can we end that? How can we have this peaceful ideal, this utopian, peaceful existence amongst people with different ideals? And I think it's by not being violent towards one another. So when the antifa is being violent, I get what they're saying. I just don't agree with the violence part of it. I get standing strong, saying no more, you're not crossing this line. But breaking people's noses, doing stuff like that, to me, I just can't figure out how to make it righteous. It just feels like the same, more of the same.
Sometimes some of the nuances are not recognized either, it feels like, in those situations where people get attacked without question. And
yeah.
I almost feel like some people who are quite violent on whether the right or the left are people who were not listened to for a very long time.
Right, and because you're so far left or so far right, you're on the fanatical fringe. So you have a lot more fanatics right there. You have so many fanatics right in there versus when they talk about centrist or the central type of our politics, there seems to be less fanatics involved in the middle. Even though there are fanatics there, they seem less fanatical because they're in this middle. Where when you're on the far left or the far right, when you're a fanatic there, you are really, you're really scary on either side. There are scary leftists and scary people on the right. You're like, probably, like you said, weren't listened to, have a lot of issues, psychological issues beyond political
And here's
issues.
their moment. Here's their chance.
Right.
Here's the news cameras, or here's this audience of their peers. And so it's sort of like putting themselves in a hazing ritual of their own to be accepted by their group.
Wow, interesting. That's good.
And
that's good.
I'm talking about any side. It does not matter if it's right, left. And it's just, I think that a little bit of that is human nature.
Yeah, I think when you go through pain a lot in your life, you have these masochistic tendencies that manifest in really perverse ways. Sadistic and masochistic tendencies that manifest and I don't mean in sexually perverse ways. I mean in perverse ways in society, like you're saying, like being violent or being hurt by violence, like in the streets, in a way that could put you in deep peril, death even.
What do you think people who experienced extremities over 40 years ago think of this?
Think of what?
Think of going to the extremes of violence, things like that. You know, people who endured Kent State, or people like Bill Ayers, White Panthers,
Boy.
Black Panthers.
I wonder what Bill Ayers thinks. I can't wait to hear. But I think it's true that you mellow with age, and perhaps maybe when you're a very angry person, it's the exact opposite. Maybe you just become more extreme, or I'm not really sure. I think that most people have seen war a lot of them become very peaceful. They're not for war. A lot of anti-war people have been to war. So I wonder about the difference of 40 years. I know for myself, I have a difference of 25 years, and I'm marked, I would definitely say I'm very different than, I wouldn't say I'm different. My character shines always.
You've marinated.
Yeah, that's true. I have marinated. I wouldn't say I'm different, but my approach to things is different, and I'm more sensitive and compassionate. I've gained a compassion or a sensitive, an understanding that, wow, that I'm not looking to hurt people anymore. I'm looking to be heard, be seen. I'm looking to be understood. Things of an artist. Once I understood my role as an artist and where I fit in society, things became a lot easier for me. But back then, I didn't understand where I fit, so I was mimicking and doing a lot of things that were contrary to the character that was shining then. But until you find where you fit, it's really hard to be. I think when you find where you fit, that's a piece of freedom. You start to become free as a human being. You're like, wow, this is, I would imagine trans people or other people, like, this is who and what I am. And there's a big weight that lifts off your shoulders. And you're like, this is where I fit. And I'm not that person. Or I don't believe in that stuff. And so it's I don't know. And through that, you know, because I don't see things the same way, I'm not such a bully. I don't want to be bullied. And so I want to be heard and I want to hear. There's just this compassion grew somewhere that I didn't have before. An understanding of my parents and an understanding of people who are abusive isn't to kill them all. It's to hug them all, to try to figure out what's going to make them not so angry. I've met in my travels, and I've been around a lot, and I've gone to the depths of hell, literally, to interview serial killers, the worst kind of person. I've studied the worst kind, the darkest people. I find that genetic flaws in human beings are rare. What I mean is someone who is just fucking violent, and they don't give a fuck. They're crazy, and they're gonna fuck. They don't give a fuck. Those people are very rare. Most people, in a street perspective or anything, act that way. But they don't. They're just looking to be loved and get by and eat and, you know, have a family, let's say, maybe, or not. But they're looking to fit in. Where do I fit within the species? What do? Do I climb the tree? Do I gather the nuts? Who am I? Squirrels get it. You know, the squirrels, they're all, other species get it. Dogs get it. They sniff each other's ass. They go, oh, you're that one? Why aren't you digging a hole? You dig the holes. I climb the trees. Dogs get it. Deers get it. Squirrels get it. We don't get it. And when we get it, we get that, we start to experience the freedom the squirrel has. That's how I see that.
Sometimes we get it way after it happens also. I know a lot of people kind of look back upon it, and you can either look at it with regret or you can look at it with growth.
Yeah.
I think that perhaps...
That's true.
Perhaps the word marinate isn't quite right, but I think that what I'm hearing is that it's sort of as if you were a piece of fruit. When you were younger, you weren't quite ripe yet. If you bite into an underripe piece of fruit, it's very bitter and sour. It leaves a taste in your mouth that you may not necessarily like. Some people like it, but it's hardened. It's protecting itself because it's not ripe yet. So it has a taste to it that's less attractive because it's not ready. When a fruit is ripe, it sweetens. But then when it starts to go past the ripeness, it continues to sweeten. And then, it might ferment. It might become sort of like a raisin. It might do all these things, but it continues to sort of soften and change over time.
I like that because you're right. You know what? This happened to me a handful of years ago. It started to be about 10 years ago, but 5 to 6 years ago, it really happened where I started to understand where I fit and who I was. And at that point, I like your whole analogy of being ripe and getting sweeter and stuff like that, because that's where it started for me. And it's only now that I can look back and go, it was when I figured out where I was and who I was and where I fit. And I can't be ashamed of that. People can make fun of me. Well, you're not tall. You're short. Or you're fat or this stuff. But until I'm happy with myself, how can I be free? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And looking back and going, wow, that's where I started to figure out, yes, this is who and what I am. I noticed also that when that happened, it was a distinct difference in all of my relationships. Everything started to change because I saw people different. I heard what they were saying differently. I had a different ear. I heard things differently. And I heard a different eye. And I was like, oh, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for my politics. That doesn't work for the person that I am and that I know I am. And most that's like an artist lifestyle or looking at myself and not trying to be something I'm not. And that's where there's like a lot of the toxic masculinity comes in. We're all taught to be this something we can't all be. And it makes a great insecurity for people. I just saw a video of a 5-foot guy on internet going off, and it's a real interesting viral video. But the explanation of it that I took out of it was that is like the essence of our society. This person is so enraged and so toxic because he's not taller, because he's and unfortunately a lot of females have put him down for that. So rather than find your place, find where you fit and be. Once you're happy, things might change for you. I don't know how to explain this, and I'm probably not making sense here anymore. It's hard to put this internet meme, a visual onto a radio, onto audio. My point is, until you figure out who you are, you're bound by the societal expectations that you've been given through your parents or your schooling or your limited references. So you're bound by that stuff. You're bound if Hercules is and football is all you've ever known, you're bound by that as what you must be to be a man, versus figuring out who and what you are and going, this is who and what I am. Call me whatever you want. This is who and what I am, and I'm happy with that. I figured it out. This is where I fit in society. I fit here, and you can never take that away from me. No one can take my creative mind away, my artistry, what I've done. They can't take that struggle to be a decent, honest artist away from me. That's who and what I am. That's what I'll always be till I die. And no, I won't be Hercules. And no, I will never be 6'6". That's just the way it is. But I can't let that make me, That's not going to make me toxic any more than maybe it used to, those things. But I'm 6'8" as far as an artist goes. I'm 7'8". I may be 12 feet tall as far as who and what I am. You know, if we're going to measure by inches. I don't know.
In my book, size doesn't matter.
Yay.
I've been Nannerl, and I sincerely appreciate you sharing and opening up with me about this, what could be a very controversial topic. You've been very generous and open about how you feel, and I'm glad we can have a conversation about this.
It's easy to talk to you.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and tune in to our next episode, wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. You can find us at Speak of the Devil Pod on Twitter and contact us at speakofthedevilpod@gmail.com. For Shane's artwork or to support his endeavors, please visit shanebugby.com or find him on Twitter at ShaneBugby. I've been Nannerl. Have a good one.
Oh, and shaneisthedevil.com.